Starting turn 2 of Victory in the Pacific, and we've got to throw some stuff on the board. A couple of new ships. This here, actually, what I forgot before I did that was everything's got to go home at the end of the turn. I scored everything, but I didn't send everybody home. So I'm going to do that. There's a little bit of thinking in there, as there was with these Japanese ships going to truck, in terms of where you want to position things so that they're available for the next turn. And as you can see, there's quite a few ships on the board now, piles and piles at truck. But even Pearl Harbor gets a lot, all those carrier groups gathered there. The English have thrown in some forces from Ceylon, and it is no longer Japan alone. Now, they still have the edge throughout the game for the next few turns, I think. Unless things go terribly badly for them. But they're now facing an opponent. That first turn, they really aren't. Alright, well, we'll start off with some of the Japanese movement. For the initial Japanese move, I'm staking out a lot of territorial claims, even out here in the Bay of Bengal, which is almost impossible. The reason that's difficult is the English have a force there, but it forces the Allied player to make some choices as to where they're going to place things. Now, a lot of these had to move 2 spaces to get where they're going. I'm just sending the light cruisers out. There's a risk to that. The risk is this. So everywhere on the board is actually accessible at this point to Allied ships. I haven't blocked anything off. Even the Japanese islands, the Americans could get a raiding force out 3 spaces out to that. Which means that cruiser may not be sufficient to hold this. Okay, so I may need to throw an air unit there. Otherwise, a powerful force of American raiders could go out here. It doesn't have to be all that powerful, but say an aircraft carrier could go out here, sink this, and take away the 4 POCs that I get each turn for having Japan. Likewise, Indonesia's got the same kind of risks. The reason I've got the ships there is so that I don't have to put aircraft there, but the aircraft are put there before the raiders are chosen. Now, with the task forces rule, I can hide with these ships and make them less likely to be hit. So it takes more, I think, for the Allies to disrupt the Japanese shipping. I haven't played it with this, so I'm not as comfortable about that, but that's my feeling there, is that I don't need to commit as much of a fleet to hold my back areas. But we'll see. The U.S. may try to pull a surprise on me there. I'm no expert with this game in any sense of the word, so, and especially I have almost no, if any, experience playing it with that optional role. And I think that one has a big effect. All right, well, now it's time for the Americans and the Brits and even the Australians to move their ships. And the Allies set sail to try to cover the areas that they feel they have the best chance. They're not going to contest the South Pacific, which is already Japanese. They're not even going to contest Indonesia. Basically, anywhere where Japanese can throw their air units, I'm going to let them keep, because they outnumber me so much. But everywhere else, with the exception of the Aleutians, where I can just drop an air unit, a U.S. air unit, if I so desire, although I may not, everywhere else I'm kind of covering tentatively. I've put a fair-sized force in a number of places, actually. Bay of Bengal, Indian Ocean, even the Coral Sea has a bunch of cruisers. Japanese would have to commit aircraft carriers to any of these. And I've taken, of course, my fast carriers, and I've flipped them over for some reason. Really, everything should be flipped over that's in port at this point, to indicate that it's not going to be available for patrolling, but that's too much effort for me. I've kept them in reserve just as the Japanese kept their fast carriers in reserve, with the intention of the longer you wait with these things, the more you get to see. But the Japanese have to make the offensive move. They're the ones who have to say, all right, I can take this, I can take this, I can take this at this point. I'm kind of cursing myself. The Allies didn't keep control of the Hawaiian Islands. I should have put patrols out there. My walking away from the game and coming back, that kind of thing, definitely had an effect there. On the other hand, I didn't put a U.S. patrol there either. I'm not sure why. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to have the Japs throw one out and try to figure out what the U.S. would do in reaction. Let me pull these carriers back. I was planning on throwing them into the Central Pacific, but they actually might be interested in there. And in the end, it's the Japanese who choose to launch the giant raid without a hope of taking anything over in the U.S. mandate. Now what's kind of cool about this is if they win this fight, they have a little bit more aircraft carrier power. If they win this fight, they can bombard the well, those ships aren't really damaged. Yeah, I think we'll take our chances instead with an attack here on Pearl Harbor, which the U.S. will of course react to instead. The reason is the naval advantage at Pearl, or in the Hawaiian Islands, is not guaranteed to the U.S. The die roll shift in terms of choosing day or night is potentially a big deal. The Japanese don't have a lot of battleships here, though. Of course, neither do the U.S. They have mainly lighter stuff. So I think the edge to a surface combat still goes to the Japanese here. We'll give them another one here. And the question is what to do with these damaged ships. I'd like to get them to Pearl, but if I lose this battle, I lose the ships. I think I'll just push them out. They can go wherever they like afterwards, and I'd rather not lose them. I just want to put them out to sea so that I can reposition them at the end of the turn. Alright, bunches of battles to come. The battle around Midway is kind of odd. The Japanese don't actually want to land on Midway. Now they're currently outnumbered in ships. One of their battleships went back to truck damaged. Otherwise they lost a battleship. The U.S. Also lost one, and both have lost a cruiser. The Americans have more cruisers, but cruisers aren't all that dangerous. I've got even odds. I've had 2 night battles and 1 day battle. Things opened up with a day battle. That didn't do anything. The night battles are where we've seen all these casualties. And we had a shot taken in on the Shoho so far. I kind of want to stick around because if I can get control of this, I can land these and take Midway. I could land it and take Midway anyway, but I would lose Midway if I don't win the battle, at least by driving the Americans off. So I think both sides are sticking around. Things immediately change. There is a day battle, and the Americans lose another cruiser. Now they no longer have the numbers. They're going to try to retreat, but the Japanese are going to pursue with their 2 cruisers. And now there's no possibility of a day battle anymore, really. There's just, because these carriers are too slow to catch up to the American cruisers, but the Japanese still have the advantage. They have the circles on theirs, which give them a +1 to shoot. And the American fleet is wiped out. I got its losses here, which means I do want to land this here, because otherwise this doesn't serve me much purpose. I get the little victory point for controlling it, but what I really want is the base so that I can launch planes there and keep it forever, well, at least until the U.S. is willing to commit a reasonable force to come in and attack. In the Bay of Bengal, the next battle I chose, well, the 2 Japanese carriers were damaged in a day battle. The Formidable has gone down. Oh, I'm sorry, no, that's the Indomitable. Formidable is still alive. Yes, it has its -1 teach damage, but it took a ton of damage. And now the Japanese want to run. They don't think they can win this fight. So this is flipped over. And the question is, do the Brits want to chase them? they don't really have the advantage. The only advantage they had was the carrier. Oh, yes, they do. There's no reason to run. Not unless I'm trying to just get the this one ship out. Alright, we'll stick around and we'll keep fighting, I guess. The decision to run is bad because they can send stuff. The only thing they wouldn't be able to send, the repulse couldn't come. Yeah, I'm running. I don't want the repulse. But the Brits are going to chase me. And we'll see how that turns out. They could end up splitting into multiple runnings later, but right now I want to keep going with what I got. Long-running battle in the Bay of Bengal with the English continually trying to get day battles. They did get stuck with a couple of night battles, though. Lost a cruiser that way. Had the repulse sent back to Ceylon, but the Hai also was... Oh no, I'm sorry. The Mutsu was sent back to port as well. The other ships here, though, sent to the bottom. A couple of little engagements here in the Indian Ocean and Coral Sea. Didn't go terribly well for the Japanese. At best, they're walking away with kind of even attrition, losing some of their good light cruisers. This is the danger of whatever I did. I don't think I've usually done this very much before, but sort of spreading out and leaving open all those options. Well, it's easy to pick off the options you didn't take. Anyway, we're off to the main event now, which is over in the Hawaiian Islands. After the first round, both sides' carrier fleets have gone down. They've both lost 4 heavy carriers. Well, the Hiryu is not so heavy, but this is something the Japanese really can't afford to do. They've got the severe majority, though, because they've driven the Yorktown out. This may mean that the U.S. wants to run. The problem with the U.S. running is that these carriers can follow it. Everything the Japanese can follow the Idaho. It's so tough to decide, yeah, I'm just going to abandon a battleship. But it is kind of a piece of crap. And the chances of surviving... So the Air Force is going to get knocked out if I don't run. And I'd rather not have that happen. I'd rather have them available more recently. And these cruisers probably are. So I think I'm going to run in 2 forces and let the Japanese do what they want to do. This Air Force goes back to a base somewhere for now. So now, here's the thing. These guys are all speed 7. None of my carriers can chase it. All I've got that could chase it is a couple light cruisers. So everything's going to go run after the Idaho. There's no chance of... There's nothing to bombard in Pearl Harbor left. And it's the Japanese who pay the price, losing one of their own battleships while... And this is always weird to me. The Idaho is damaged, which means it can limp back to port. I can actually limp back to Pearl Harbor because of that pursuit, because all the aircraft carriers went after it. They probably shouldn't have. Should have left some back. Let's say I did. We'll limp it back to Samoa in that case, rather than... Well, I can send it back to Australia. I think I can repair American ships in Australia. But that's what we end up with, and we're actually going to get control of the Hawaiian Islands, which I think means that these ships can't return to Pearl Harbor. That's a bad sign for the Americans. There doesn't seem to be any such prohibition. And the swing of points this turn was 9 points. I'm going to pull these Japanese planes off after returning everything to its bases. Now, on this upcoming turn, Japanese get another carrier and a couple of Marines over here. Whereas the U.S. gets some more battleships, some Marines, some air, a lot of air power actually. And the Brits are going to get a carrier at Ceylon. How does it feel right now? Well, feels like the Japanese lost a lot of carriers they couldn't afford. They got a fair trade on them, which is better than they did in their big carrier battle, at least in at Midway. but this is Coral Sea time period right now. And this was a little bloodier than you'd expect from the Coral Sea. But the U.S. isn't getting a carrier. Next turn, or turn 4, they'll get the Wasp. And they don't start getting them, but then turn 6 you can start to see. They just get so many that there's no way for the Japanese to compete anymore. This is the period where the Japanese have to be scoring their points, and they're scoring them. Now, I believe the base rules limit the Japanese to 29 points. Okay? The goal of the game is for the U.S. to get them into the blue area, essentially. But I think the turn 9 rules, of course, I may be thinking a little expansion or difference that I have, actually makes it so that the points doesn't seem to be in here. So now I have to look up the points for the other one to see if in the base game the points are limited by the chart. I think they are, and I think the expansion I had said, hey, the Japanese can go over that, but they don't seem to be able to by the turn 9 rules. Well, one can be thankful these rules are small. The only place in the base of the rules that explains POC is controlling sea areas. It barely explains it at all. It just states how many points you get. Okay. The advance also talks about the changes in the POCs. Turns out the only place they actually discuss this POC is, in of all places, the game components, the map board. Standard Avalon Hill crap, huh? This is a Hamlin game. It's kind of interesting. Hamlin, his games are very, very... The ones that I've seen are just all these very different ideas. There's not a lot of different games. Not some huge, quantity of games like a Richard Berg has out there, but so many different takes. Like, I designed that. I don't need to ever do anything like that again. Of course, we got, let's see who gets in here with, we got a production. Yeah. I don't know. Greenwood's not listed as development in here. He usually had his fingers in everything, but I don't know. Maybe Hamlin was going around wrecking rolls too. But when you're told, make it 8 pages or less, that's got to be tough too. But it is not an intuitive place to look for this rule. Is in what is essentially the components descriptions. Whatever. All right, up this goes.